you talking about shitting yourself. Fucking, I was like, what are we? Like, I thought
Therapy
it was
Geeks,
really
a
funny.
free podcast by Luke McGibbon and Louise Taylor.
But I was up around White Rocks and I was thinking, need to get into the sea. Need to get into the sea. But Glencoe is beautiful, like, but it is like at the minute with the wild water swimming, there's a lot. It's particularly women seem to be able to. They really that intensity, that intense sensation, that sensory experience, and it's perimenopausal.
Hey, actually, yeah, that's a good point. I
Menopausal.
mean, that sounds like the perfect
Yeah.
counter to like a hot flush, isn't it? Is like
Well,
literally
it's
cold flush yourself into
because
the
that's
sea.
what we do. We're just
Yeah.
all walking around having loads of hot flushes.
Well, yeah, well, like,
Right.
yeah, I'm not saying, I'm not saying like it's hard. I imagine it's not so conveniently timed that you're just like, well, there's a lake right next to me. I'll just throw myself
Having a
in and
hot
go for a
flush.
pan. Yeah.
Just get in the lake. Go.
What you need to do is bring the lake with you. You need to have like, what you need is a pickup truck and fill the back with water and just like pull over in an emergency if there's like a hot flush based emergency. Here, do you ever hear of Wim Hof? No?
Who's Wim? No.
So he's this sort of career podcast guest probably. He's like this Dutch guy and he's a bit barmy. And his thing is he's got this breathing technique where he says he can change his body temperature doing it. And he teaches it to people and all. You can learn it on YouTube and that. And he's got like holds all these records for ice swimming and stuff. And he's got these religious views on cold that I find quite interesting. And he's like, oh yeah, I just I used to swim under the ice, but one day my retinas froze and I could not see. So I just came back, like casual as you like, as if that was like, oh no, oh my bloody retinas. Oh,
Well,
I'm not going to be able to have lunch for hours now. Have to get my sight back. Oh yeah. But I just, I was thinking of him because we're talking about the wild water swimming, and I suppose it's kind of about a stress thing that you put on your body, like because I sometimes, I tried to learn his breathwork thing myself, and sometimes for stress I find it to be really useful, and then other times just nothing. But so it's inconsistently good in my opinion, but like. I think that's probably a good place to start with stress, isn't it? Because it's in the body, like.
well, yeah. But this is it. Like, how do you know you're stressed? Is
I
it
don't know.
Is it? Well, what is stress anyway?
Oh yeah, let's do that. That's the big thing, and you got to define it before you. I think it's like, because it's not entirely mental and it's not entirely external. It's a little bit of both. There's a book about counseling for stress problems that I bought, and I bought it years ago, and I've not looked at it once, and that's because right, every client who comes in and they say, "Oh, I've got stress problems," I think, "Oh right, I better look at that book when I go home," and then like within minutes about talking about the stress, they're talking about a reason, and then you're just talking about the reason,
Yeah.
and like which is obviously, in my opinion, probably more worthwhile to work on rather than coping skills if you can work on them. So I've never had to open it, but I opened it today. Opened it today for the first time, and they gave this incredibly detailed chart, which I'm probably going to share on the page after we're done today. But right. Okay. So I'm even just gonna hold it up for you. But like,
Let
no,
me see.
that's no use at all. But it looks like a bloody. It looks like massive flowchart. Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
external pressures plus internal pressures plus coping resources equals a cognitive appraisal. So like the threat. You know what I mean? The thing.
Mhm.
And then your response to stress, the behavioral. And then they've divided that response into like 7 different categories, which is like behavioral response, what you do, affective response, what you feel, sensory response, what you feel physically, imaginal response, the picture in your head, cognitive response, your thoughts, the interpersonal response, how you treat your people around you, and the biological response, like your heartbeat and all that stuff. Always the heartbeat, it's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah. Jesus, that's a lot.
It's a shit ton of stuff, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's comprehensive. I'll give it that. But it's certainly very formulaic, which I don't know of all clients like that.
Do you not think it's often just stimulus response?
I mean, yeah, it's basically the same, really, isn't it, as that? I mean, like, stimulus response. Though I think that it would be, I think the most important part of that before, like, I don't think they needed a big old flow chart like that, but I think that perhaps something that could be kept is that internal pressure plus external pressure plus coping resources, because that's all the stuff that you really need to look at. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, because let me see, right. So internal pressure, external pressure, and then what is it? Coping, what?
Coping resources. So,
That is
like,
just so fucking weird.
well, what is a coping resource? I guess, yeah.
I'm telling you, like my coping, what are they? Coping resources are going to vary from day to day. Because like, well, some days you're more stressed than others. Like, and let's think about this in terms of, so internal, external coping resources in terms of the pandemic and what's happening at the minute. Like, we are in lockdown, yes. Have the schools opened again? What the hell's going on? That kind of is inducing a hell of a lot of stress in people.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's very much an external pressure causing an internal pressure, isn't it? Well, as like
Yes.
it seemed so simple whenever we first got into it, and now I feel like actually no, it's not so simple. I mean, maybe the pandemic's just a more difficult example. It's the perfect storm of internal and external pressures, really, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it's like a big, like, so it's like these coping resources make it seem a little bit too, I don't know, that's a bit twee, that whole coping resources, because the external, I think when it comes down to it, when you start really getting on this psychoanalytical train or Jungian or whatever, you really start beginning that externally you have next to no control.
Sure.
COVID has brought that to the light.
Yes, yeah.
In a profoundly dramatic way.
Yeah.
Because people believe if they've got structure or they've got routine and they buy into these systems and these ways of working, they often believe, well, that's that, and that A leads to B and B leads to C. So the whole school system thing at the minute is like meltdown central for people because they're like, take a year off, what are GCSEs, transfer tests, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not, because externally, what externally seemed to work has now been thrown into complete chaos.
Well, I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because it brings to mind the old when you're talking about what we can control and what we can't externally. I think that's like so important to sling your hook over as a therapist in person, because that's always so easily forgotten how little control we have in life. It's that old Reinhold Niebuhr quote, this or the Serenity Prayer, isn't it? The grant me to the grant me the strength to change what I can, the peacefulness to accept what I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. Or I'm paraphrasing, but like, and that, like, so much pressure comes off whenever you say, you bring back that locus of control to, like, well, I can control my thoughts mostly, my feelings sometimes, and most things around me pretty much never. Like, it really takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. Like, a lot of that internal pressure, I guess, is trying to control everything.
Yes, or trying to make sense of it, trying to accept it,
and
process it.
Yes, I think, like, yeah, acceptance is a big thing, and it's such a dirty word, I think, because of the implication that when you say acceptance, you're saying not to do anything about it, and, like, acceptance is not that, really. I mean, it's kind of the opposite, really. I mean, so we talked about this in the last episode, that quote from Carl Rogers, the classic one about the curious paradox. Like, if I truly accept myself as I am, then I can change.
Just a clanger. That's such a beauty.
Oh, it's a beaut.
It's a gem. Just
It is,
still marveling at the Rogers.
And the 12-step programs, they kind of incorporate that. Like your first step is to accept that you have a problem. And like, sometimes sometimes internal things move simply from acceptance. You don't even need to do anything after that. But like, accepting something isn't the same as just sort of. It's not the same as being lackadaisical. Acceptance isn't being lazy about a problem. It's a true appraisal of the problem and your place within it. But it's just hard to convey that to people. And I think it's that word acceptance. I think like there's a certain therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, and like in their lexicon, I've noticed in the last few years, for this reason, they've stopped using the word acceptance. I think it's still in the title of the therapy, because branding, but in the therapy they would use the word expansion instead, meaning a kind of mindful expansion of allowing the thing to fill a space.
I think this is really fascinating because you're talking about acceptance and commitment. I've had a client recently come about saying that they were receiving that therapy. I had no idea what they were talking about, like what that even mean. But it made sense. Like I was like, acceptance and commitment. Like I said, I'm not trained in that.
Yeah.
Surprise. I'm not trained in that just because I didn't have it. I was like, what is that? But it just sounds like radical acceptance.
It's got bits of it in that. I think it's pretty great actually. It's like what's known as a third wave CBT kind of therapy. So like that's basically the latest. There's like third waves in like psychodynamic and person-centered work as well. Basically new versions of old ideas tuned up and improved. So at first I just thought this was going to be just CBT plus mindfulness, which is fine, but not super for me. But like it's it incorporates CBT, incorporates person-centered ideas, some Buddhist thinking. I think it's pretty rad, but I don't know a huge amount about it. But I know it's about sort of building psychological flexibility and diffusing troubling thoughts rather than challenging and replacing them, which to me sounds like a lot less of a struggle. But yeah, it's pretty great. I think mostly it's just given that name so they can have the nice acronym of ACT.
Sometimes I think a load of these new ideas, right, are just people. I don't want to sound rude. This is probably right. It just sounds a bit twee, a bit like, okay, if we'll all be well if we like, or it's a bit like if you do this, like you do this, it'll all work out.
Sure.
It's like a quick fix. It's like a quick fix solution for everybody. But actually, I'm doing my PhD, and in my third year, and in my first year, I was researching, doing a literature review on mental health, and I remember stress being spoken about. Like we probably talked about, it's really, really like a modern, 21st century, 20th century phenomenon that's really taken off. Like the stress levels that we are, our society, our living, the way we live, is stressing us out. Like it's highly stressful. It's just unnatural. And I suppose that's something that I've learned from my stress, that a way for me to manage my stress is to change the way I live, and to make decisions that put my well-being ahead of say like my livelihood, or like my earning potential and things like that there. Because I really think that a lot of us are normalizing high levels of stress, instead of making changes to a really messed up society. So we're thinking we're the problem. So we're all stressed. A lot of us are really, really highly stressed, and we're thinking, well, I need to just manage this, instead of actually, is it not a bit fucked up that you're born into this world and you're expected to work your ass off until you die and pay for it? And I just think that we see stress as an individual problem, whereas I think it's a collective, it's a societal problem more than anything. Our levels of stress, and particularly when I see what we're doing to children, it actually stresses me out, which leads me to the quote from Angela Davis, which is how I manage my stresses through my activism. And it's, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change, I'm changing the things I cannot accept.
Nice.
And that is how I manage my stress, by getting involved in things.
I dig that a lot, because sometimes you will get a client in whose problems are, I mean, maybe I'm just buying into their story, but like their problems seem pretty societal, like I almost
Yes.
want to say, well, you shouldn't have to change, don't change,
Yes.
fuck everything else, like, and I think that the solution for that, I mean, like, maybe therapy for that person should be finding ways to encourage activism in them, to take
Yes.
I don't know, but like, maybe that sounds like I'm just kicking the ball back in their court rather than away from society. But I mean, society's not in the chair; it's them. I read this great article about Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, or it's just Queer Eye now, isn't it? And it's this show where these 5 incredibly talented, incredibly skilled dudes come into total stranger's life and just completely improve it, and it's always very emotional and it's always very amazing. And one of them's like a therapist, and one of them's a chef, and one of them's a homeowner, and of course there's like a fashion guy and a a hair, beauty, self-care guy, like, they're all fucking amazing. But there was this article positing, why isn't there another one who teaches them how to like organize, or like helps them join a union or some shit.
Mobilize, agitate, and organize.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, because that's a good point, because like I sometimes I'm hesitant about this topic, stress, because sometimes I think there's like workplaces all around the world who will like give stress reduction training and like how to cope with stress, rather than just pay people what they deserve to be paid, or have them work in safe conditions. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yes.
I want to
I
talk
was
about
thinking,
I want to
I
talk
was
about
thinking
stress, but
of
not pawn it off on people. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I was thinking, like, can you be like? I think for any counselor, if you find out they're a capitalist, are they a proper counselor?
That's an interesting question. Do you know
Do
what?
you know what I
Oh,
mean?
do you know what really threw it was? I found this so bloody interesting. Was in 2019. The December election. I think Mick Cooper, who's sort of a fairly big name in UK counselling, a really really prolific author and researcher, and really talented speaker, and great at getting across ideas. And is this just a podcast about how class Mick Cooper is now? I don't know, but
Don't
he did.
tell me. Do not tell me he voted conservative or he was a
No,
conservative.
no, quite the no. He made this post in, I think, one of the big counseling Facebook groups, saying like, normally I would discourage politics in these groups, but this is so important. You've got to vote Labour. And there was a shitstorm. I mean, like,
They do kick off in those counselling groups. Like they
oh, they
do
do,
kick off.
yeah, they
They
do.
kick off all the time. I don't even engage anymore.
They got teeth, man. But yeah, it was It was an interesting discussion. I think, like, it wasn't that people were being bitchy. I think there was a bit of snark, perhaps, from all directions. I suppose there's good people on both sides. That's me being Trump there, but like, yeah. But I think it's really interesting discussion, and I'm to be honest, I'm kind of with McCooper there, because like, sometimes sometimes the stakes are just so high at elections now that
Well, this is very interesting because you're dealing with stress, right?
uh-huh.
And you're dealing with our like it's a vocation. And actually, you've just reminded, I did get involved in one of the discussions about this is a dream, right? A client, they put up a thing that said that they about cancellation fees.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And the therapist was referred to like a call girl. Oh right, do you just call like you're more expensive than a hooker or a call girl? And it was referring that because they were charging cancellation fees, it was that
Wow.
kind of like I
Not there's anything wrong with being a hooker or a call girl.
but I was like, I don't charge cancellation fees.
Uh-huh.
I don't do that. That's it. I think that life's hard enough. And if somebody's having a hard time and they can't attend for whatever reason, I'm not going to make it any harder. So Like if they can't make it, like, but that's my choice. But whenever I'd written that and I said, I think this is a vocation, we're dealing often with vulnerable people, and I don't agree with, fill your boots, do whatever you want, but I don't agree with it, because if there's anxiety and things like that there and they're finding it really hard to get there, I just cut them some slack, Anyway, one woman got really arsey and she was just like really going for me, but they go to destroy you as instead of going, all right, fine, we're different.
Yes. Yeah.
She was like, you're not making any sense. You're not making any sense. No sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, right, that's fine. I don't agree with you. That's fine. I make no sense. Bye. Do you know what I mean? Because she was so incensed. She was so stressed. She was stressed. And I think that's why they kick off a lot in those counseling groups, because they want to be helping people. They want to be seen as doing the right thing. And they're not, and they don't want to be seen, because it's a weird one. It is a vocation, but it's a profession. And I suppose I have it as a kind of side thing. It's not my main thing at the minute. And I don't think it will be. I like it as a side thing, but for people who have it as their main thing, they obviously treat it like, I suppose, it's a business. And that's where it's...
Well, yeah, I guess that's a good point, is like, how is counseling for you, I mean, I suppose you can see it as a business and a vocation, but it just depends, doesn't it? Like,
business
but
and
that does...
vocation. This is it. Like, this is where this is on a stressed society, and an ill society, and a society with vulnerable people. When you're talking about counseling these services as being businesses, we're part of the problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, because it does color the way that you would work with people. Because, like, I mean, this is why I think it's very hard to divorce politics from anything. Is that beneath politics there's ideology, and ideology influences... well, beneath ideology is values, even, and values influences how you treat people in the street.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, like, because trying to think of nice things to say about conservatism. That it values individuality and things like that, and I suppose empowering an individual. So perhaps that person would rather give money to an individual rather than a charity or something like that. I don't know. I'm maybe just off the top of my head, but yeah, like, how do we get here from stress? But I see the point. The point though.
I think it all links.
Yeah.
The stress of people are generally, at the minute, the stress levels, I think, are very high because of COVID, lockdown, multiple lockdowns. We're a year down the line from a lockdown. What was it? A year ago, there were like a few weeks to flatten the curve, right? So we're completely like, what the hell's going on? How long is this going to go on for?
I think, that's the big thing. I think regarding the pandemic is I think that so much of it was to do with just the lack of end dates, which they can't really provide end dates. That's the problem. But like, it's still, it's clearly behind the issue. Like, I do find that, since there seems like, I think it's probably why they were so keen in England to announce an end date, but obviously that's been criticised for not taking into account how quickly the numbers can turn. But it does seem to be like, I think we are pretty much out of the woods soon, But anyway, sorry, yeah, end dates, things like that, and being unable to separate politics from anything.
Maybe it's just us.
Maybe it's just us. I mean, like, I don't often get political with clients, and I think sometimes that's probably for the better. I had a client who believed in QAnon conspiracy theories, in a previous job. I haven't spoken to him in the last few weeks, but obviously a large portion of that's moved the goalposts or quit, because there's a lot of prophesized dates that came and went. And like, that was a client where I was glad I hadn't really revealed any of my politics to them, because that's not really just a conspiracy theory so much as it is like a kind of a cult or a religion, where I think it's us or them, and then I probably would have lost him as a whole. So I do think there's a value to being non-political in your work.
Too, about stress, right? So right, if you were a conspiracy theorist, and you believe that we're all being duped and everything by the government, how would that impact your stress levels?
Oh my God, yeah, this is it as well. Like, that isn't an interesting point. Like that, because so many conspiracy theorists say I'm going to stop living in fear, and then they live in much more fear than I'm living in. I mean, me wearing a mask doesn't really reflect a certain level of fear. It's just, it's
Oh my
really
God.
doesn't really cost me anything to wear a mask, and it doesn't really bother me at all. And
Me
it's
neither.
like there was a great tweet that was something along the lines of like, well, I wear a mask because if I'm right, I'm potentially saving lives. If I'm wrong, then oh no, I'll have worn a piece of cloth on my face for a while. Like, you'll need to stop playing this bullshit. Like, yeah, I think that there's a lot more fear in conspiracy theorists than there are in non-conspiracy theorists, which is a shame because they certainly don't feel that way. But it's in their every action. I don't know, but like, yeah, I think in a way they feel they're doing a kind of activism. It's something meaningful to them that makes them feel like they're having an impact on the world. It's just a shame that it's usually such a negative one, I suppose. But like, yeah. So we were talking about activism as a sort of cure for societal or political stress, and about stress as a concept being maybe societal, and us wanting to talk about it without pawning it off on the experiencer. But I mean, like, what ways are there of dealing with stress and avoiding it and working through it, so to speak?
Well, I think first of all, identifying things that bring you peace, bring you joy, pleasure, that where you feel contentment.
Sure, I think the coping resources, as they say
Yes.
in that book. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, because a lot of people would focus a lot on identifying stressors, but we often forget to identify what makes us happy.
Yeah,
So
to balance it out, like, if
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
a stressful day, how are you going to, because they talk about de-stress.
Yeah, and the things that bring us joy are much more within our control usually than our stressors.
Well, it depends what your stressors are, right? So
Hmm.
if there's something, like if your stressors are a relationship,
Mhm.
or like, well, or like, yeah, it depends. Like, it's identifying what your stressors are. But like, I know I get stressed by, like, well, recent thing was my laptop died.
Mhm.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that is pretty stressful. It's your connection to the world as well, isn't it?
Well, I could, fuck, it was, but then I was trying, what I did was I spent a lot more time in nature.
Uh-huh.
My supervisor was like, go old school, just write it down, do lots of reading, don't worry about it. And I'm like, right, going old school. But see, by day 7,
Uh-huh.
I was like, right, that's it. Like, my stress levels, I was a dick. Like, I was so
Really?
stressed. Yeah, I was like, I was so stressed. It was so like, but it all worked out. But it was just like, it kept building and building and building. So it was like, when's this going to be sorted? Because I put my laptop in to get fixed, and then one of them had thought they'd COVID. So then the
Mm.
laptop shop, the laptop DIY place shut, and it was
Fucking hell.
just like,
Well,
it's like one of those, those old, what was he, those old comedy jerk movies or something, where just everything that could go wrong was going wrong. But it
aye,
felt
aye.
like that. So it became hyper dramatized in my little freaking brain. So the
Well, that's quite
stress.
dramatic, isn't it?
Well, is it really though?
I mean, in a way, potential life-ending viral outbreak, and you left not connected to the world for that period of time. I mean, like, it's interesting when, I was thinking, I was curious when you said that, like, that, so much of the attention on social media has always been about how it's correlated to depression and anxiety and obviously stress, but also, that it does connect us to people, and that is one of the antidotes to stress. Well, it's one of the factors that causes resilience, is being able to connect with others.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So in this time, like, people are like Zoom burnout. Like, can you imagine somebody in 2019 saying, "Oh, I have Zoom burnout."
Yeah.
People be like, "What the fuck are you talking
What is that?
about?"
Yeah.
Whereas now it's the thing. I have Zoom burnout.
Even did you say 2009? Because I feel like even in 2019, people.
2019.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, yeah, it's so weird how Skype just dropped the ball, man. They were like household names of video conferencing, and then their time came, and they just weren't. They just did not answer the door. You know what I mean? Suddenly everyone's using this Zoom thing that they've
Yeah,
only
and how
just heard of.
loyal are we as a general
Yeah.
population?
Yeah. Hey, I'm only loyal to what works for me. I'm not gonna stick to a brand that doesn't give a shit about me. You know, here there's something
Oh,
we're talking about connecting to people, and sorry, something popped into my head from probably one of the most popular stress TED talks by Kelly McGonigal. And one of the things she was saying was about, well, there's a few things in that, but for every major financial stress event, the risk of dying increased by 30%, but not true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed no stress-related increase in dying. Caring created resilience. So, like, I suppose to me, that's about connection there, that creates that
wow.
resilience.
Yeah,
And of course, caring
yeah.
for others is also meaningful too, isn't it? In that whole way.
This is caring for others activism.
I guess it can be. Is this? Are we going to just spend the whole? Are we going to shepherd people towards political revolution with every? I'm not against it. Let's do it. Nationalize everything.
Is that not what we was that not what we planned?
Viva la revolution. This is going to be the. I don't know. I was going to say it's going to be like a very. I want to be a very lame Che Guevara. I want to be on somebody's T-shirt frowning.
That's so good.
But I mean, the thing is about though, when I hear caring, creative resilience, I hear that like, because I don't want to generalize, because I think that like, as you know, I used to work in like a caring and supporting job, and I didn't always feel super resilient doing that, and I think
Sorry,
it
I just
what.
am inappropriately laughing. We
You're
should
laughing at
call
my
it.
pain. That's what that. That's what that is.
No, I think we should call this episode "Stress Revolutionaries." Creating revolutionary
I'm done.
through stress relief.
I'm done. Yeah, let's do it.
Sorry, I'm going to mute myself when I
No, no, no,
laugh my ass off at my own jokes.
no. I just, yeah, like, I suppose that I just don't want to say just on its own that caring creates resilience, because I think it has to be, there's more to it than that. I mean that, like, the caring that you're not obligated to do. I think because I was in a care and support job, and those jobs are filled with burnout. People are burning out there all the time. So like,
Yes.
to just make a blank statement, caring creates resilience. I can hear support workers hearing that and going like, ugh, no, it doesn't. And I mean that, like, when I was doing that, the sort of stuff that made me feel great and made me feel okay at the end of a horrible shift, it wasn't necessarily the care and support work that was part of my job. It was the care that I was not obligated to do, to be able to do something nice for a coworker, or to do something above and beyond for one of the people we were looking after. Like, though I don't want to encourage above and beyond to people who are burned out. I just mean that like, um what brings that feeling of connection is more than just sort of stuff that you can be paid to do in a care and support job, because I think people just assume that it's the same.
Well, this is where the words you're using and everything, resilience.
Hmm.
I have a real issue with the word resilience.
Yes, we talked about
Being,
this before, didn't we? I can't remember.
yeah, like resilience. It's so good because it's basically saying you're amazing if you can take loads and loads and loads of shit.
Yeah.
Keep
Maybe you shouldn't have to
take a
take a load of
wave
shit.
after wave of shit, and then you're a superstar. Then you die. Take a load of shit. And Grace is going to be like, she was incredibly, she was incredibly resilient.
I don't know. I'm in two minds about what you're saying. Because like, I think that kind of what we're talking about is whose responsibility is it to ensure somebody's mental stability, and is it
Yeah.
like is it yours as a person to change, to become more resilient, or is it the world's to stop giving us a load of shit on a plate and telling us that it's chicken? But like,
Well, that's interesting you say that because that seems like either or.
well, I think it depends, isn't it? It's context dependent. Like, because there's that old saying about like, better to wear shoes than to cover the whole world in leather and walk barefoot. But on the other hand, I feel like when you talk about that, and you talk about when you talk about making tougher people rather than an easier world, I think that that's a very easy excuse to deprive vulnerable people of stuff they need to survive in the name of hardening them.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Yeah.
like I think that's a good quote about covering your shoe or wearing shoes instead of covering the world in leather, but also
Yes.
that there's a certain amount of deprivation or taking something away or hardness that is not helpful and does not make you stronger. And I guess the line's different for everyone, but I like to think there's a certain broad line we can draw.
I this is where I think this is really interesting. It's like stress. You're talking about stress and caring and I think like what you're saying about care workers and burnout and resilience,
Hmm.
it is all like the NHS. I like talk about stress. Like I can't even imagine how those workers are feeling.
God damn, yeah. I mean, like that's yeah. I know that at some point early in the pandemic, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were like looking for volunteer counselors to speak to the doctors and nurses, like over the phone and things like that. And I think, I knew some people. I think I tried to sign up, but I can't remember. I know I wasn't able to do it anyway, but I knew some people who were even just like, I'm not going to do that. I don't know what I would say to them. Like, because I think it kind of ties into what we were just saying. Is like they shouldn't have to be dealing with that. It's just the consequences of a cruel world. I can't counsel that away. Though I suppose there's obviously you can give people coping skills and a space to be heard, and you can never underestimate the power of that stuff. But I almost feel like helping an individual condones a unhealthy larger thing. I don't know actually.
This is it. This is where, see, I think you meet people where you're at and where they're at,
Hmm.
and you do what you can.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do what you can, like, but we all have choices. But I think a lot of people forget that very, very, very quickly.
Yes, definitely. Like, yeah, yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground very quickly, haven't we? So we're talking about with stress, like connecting with others, focusing on what we can control, and activism, of course,
Yes.
and
So we're all going to just start a revolution. And any country who says they're not a socialist is a capitalist counselor, which is an oxymoron.
I just am baffled by it. I mean, I wouldn't even just say like, like any counselor who's not a socialist. I just mean like anyone who's not even left leaning, anyone who doesn't support
Yes,
a really well funded public sector, and
yes.
anyone who thinks that this is a well funded public sector is an idiot. You know what I mean? Like that's just it's
Anybody who thinks a society is working,
yeah.
that's what I think, because that's what I would love to see more from our profession, or our
Mm,
vocation, or our peers, is more like what we're seeing, what we're dealing with, who we're, kind of like how we can say, how can we make these things better? Like somebody was saying recently that like so few of the health services, so few of the health centers have counseling attached to them.
yeah.
How can we have mental health as the leading cause of ill health in this country with so little funding for mental health services? And we're
Yes.
going through a pandemic.
Aye, and of course as well that I draw attention to the fact that they were looking for volunteer counselors, and not to say where's my money in the middle of this. I don't mean to be a greedy opportunist, but I also feel that one of the big issues with the mental health sector in the UK, and I don't know about Ireland, probably the same there, is that there's an over reliance on volunteers, and there always has been. And I
Yes.
think that like maybe that's because of amazing work done by charities, but also it does lead to an undervaluing of the profession. I also wonder if maybe part of that is based on a medical model of mental health about it being purely biological, and that seems to be slowly crumbling. Not that there's anything wrong with medication, I hasten to add. I just mean that, you know, I think we're always in danger of falling into what previously mentioned Mick Cooper, what he calls a therapeutic monoculture, which is like a one size fits all approach to a very much there is no sizes in this problem. There is a million different sizes. There's no one size fits all approach to mental health. It's not all medication. It's not all CBT. It's not all psychodynamic or person-centered.
Yes,
That different people need different stuff.
that's exactly it. Stress is subjective. Your triggers are going to be subjective. Things that are going to affect one person a lot more aren't going to maybe have the same effect. So you're always dealing with the root cause of the stress. If that's
Yes.
something that somebody wants to change, and they want to deal with, you're always dealing with the root cause of the stress, and you're always moving towards a space of like, whatever they want. A lot of the time it's more contentment, it's more rest, it's more ease, it's more enjoyment, more leisure.
Yeah, like Kelly McGonigal said that, that stress is my body asking if I am up to a challenge, and I like that idea. Maybe the challenge is to find out what you need, and I guess that brings back that idea of the sort of the growth mindset of how, if you reframe things as challenges or fuel for growth as a person, then you're more likely to view them as better. She said, when you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you trigger the biology of courage. Ooh, I like that. That sounds
Well,
nice, doesn't it?
it's also like, I don't get stuff done if I'm not a bit stressed.
Well, yeah.
So it's a motivator, isn't it? It's keeping it in balance where it doesn't tip, because I do my body does tell me at times you're about to hit a wall, you're hitting burnout here, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of what people come to counseling or come to therapy for, is whenever they've gone past the point of it being healthy.
Yeah, that it can be quite gratifying in small amounts, isn't it? Because people like to feel busy and it feels meaningful. And I suppose it brings to mind also this. I think we might have talked about it in the happiness episode a million years ago, but the idea of a flow state, about when you get totally lost in an activity, and there's a chart where basically it's like high skill in one axis, high difficulty in the other, and flow goes up the middle. So if it's low difficulty and you're high skilled, you're bored. And if it's high difficulty and you're low skilled, then it's anxiety. So in that middle is when you feel skilled and the difficulty feels hard but surmountable. That is a sort of the optimum level of stress. I'll post it on the page even.
Yeah. So you post it on the page. Because we're gonna have to, I want to talk about you turning 30.
I did turn
Happy
30,
birthday
didn't I?
to you.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday to you. Did you have a good? So you had a good time?
Yeah, lovely, lovely. I saw a bunch of waterfalls. I went to a reservoir. It's very water themed actually, but I just went to a load of beautiful looking places and just had a bit of a sit. I'm very, you know, I'm much more boring than I was my 20th birthday, but also much happier. So maybe I could have done with a
Rings and
bit of that.
roundabouts.
Well, this is it. Swings and roundabouts. I feel like
That sounds wonderful.
it is pretty well. I'm pretty chuffed with it, but I'm concerned concerned that we've done an entire episode on stress, and I feel like we should at least pay lip service to the stuff that everyone always talks about when it comes to stress, which is mindfulness and sleep and exercise. So there we go.
Yeah,
We've mentioned them.
but that's why talking about your birthday was so good, because look at that. You just said go and look at beautiful things, spending time in nature. That's my reason. Like, connect with nature, slow, because nature, the pace of nature just is. It's just waterfalls, just do the thing. Oh, nature. We are nature.
We all need silence.
But when we go
as well, I think.
What?
Sorry, it sounded like I was telling you to shut up, but I was also thinking, when I was thinking of nature, I was thinking we all need silence as well, because
I know we do.
I was at a waterfall
but actually,
today.
By a waterfall, though, you're not going to have silence.
Not super silent. The reservoir, though, Silent Valley, so good. Like, do you know whenever you notice that absence of traffic noise in the distance? Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you notice total silence, and it's so. I think we need that sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, I remember reading an article about a soundproof box that you could go in and really experience true silence, because very few of us know what it's actually like. And this person was like describing like they could virtually hear their blood go through their vessels.
It's wild. Oh, I think I know that room you're talking about. It's like it's in like a studio or somewhere in America, because they were using it for recording kinds of music.
Yes.
So incredibly soundproof that sometimes it's like the soundproofing works in the room that you're in. Like can't really hear yourself speaking out loud. I would.
Oh, but they were like, they became attuned to like their body, like, I don't know, growing in that moment, like their body, and it was just like the way they wrote about it, it was incredible. So we think what is silence to us is often just less noise.
Yeah, and then but you really notice when it's true silence. Have you ever been to the wee like one of them wee isolation pods, the wee ones where you float about in water in the dark?
Oh yes, I have.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there's one down the road.
There's one in down the road. Is there one where you are? I thought there was only
Castle. Hey, well, down the road is like 15. Well, it's about 15-20 miles away. In the middle, oh my God, flotation tank.
Ah, nice. There's a great one in Newton Arts I've been to called Hydro Ease. I just thought, oh, why not promote a local business? But
Angel Sanctuary. Just
there you go. We'll have to share it in the page. Get them to share us, eh? But like really incredibly quiet and peaceful, and I can't say I've had any sort of mystical or spiritual experiences in them, but I mean the level of relaxation is unprecedented, and where I sort of went in my head was interesting. I think like the original experiments with isolation tanks were also conducted with LSD, so I wouldn't mind giving that a bit of the old college try. I think that would be interesting.
That is the last thing I need. I do not need fucking hallucinogenics. I remember somebody assuming that I would smoke weed because I was an environmentalist. Like, I do not smoke weed. I do not take drugs. I like my cider.
Aye, well,
but I don't. Like, I couldn't. The last thing I need is an increase of my consciousness. Like, I need to be grounded more than anything. Jesus Christ.
What is it? What is the opposite of an increase? How do you decrease it? Is it trash TV?
No, yeah, well, this is it. You stay grounded though. So a lot of people are looking for the increase, the consciousness shifting. So whereas a lot of time, being grounded, because a lot of the time you're in your own world and stuff. And if you're a very if somebody is a deep thinker and stuff, you will need to be grounded more, whereas somebody wants to open their consciousness more, they would want to take the hallucinogenics or the psychedelics and stuff like that. I'm all right. I will pass.
Well, this is it. Like, it's a matter. It's choice is an important thing there. Yeah, but that is an annoying stereotype, isn't it? That like people just assume. I can't think of a word. Crustiness. People assume you're a big old crusty if you give a shit about the environment.
You're just what is it? A patchouli smelling, weed smoking, like, and I'm just like, you know what? That's not me.
I mean, it is me, but I still, I still resent the idea of a stereotype. I mean, not that
you resent the stereotype that you're living up to.
Well, I'm not too bad. I'm not living in hemp, but because I think hemp only comes in the one color, doesn't it? Which is old dreadlock.
Oh, yeah. You love Brighton. In Brighton, there was loads of different hemp.
The one green MP, isn't it, in Brighton?
Yeah, green. Well, yeah, that's right. Caroline Lucas.
Some pub.
Here, but we were trying to avoid politics at the end.
Oh, we were, weren't we? Fuck. Say nothing. We'll fade out even now. Fuck it.
Here, well, I tell you what, I want to say before we go that for our listeners who have come, there's a few loyal listeners have come on our journey. I want to say thank you very much for your patience.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your kindness, because I've listened back to some of our episodes and they're really badly recorded.
Yeah, I think over the years, I know we're only really figuring out editing now, really, aren't we? So it feels like after 3 years, we're only really starting to slicken up. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's so I appreciate
that's largely because of you.
Well, I mean, anyone can learn it. It's easy enough, and it's a nice skill to have though, definitely, and it's quite relaxing. It's not so relaxing as listening to my own voice and every intake of breath that I have to cut out
Oh
from this.
God.
I have to take out every and then sometimes I leave them in just for character, but like just yeah, if I had a penny for every you know
If I have, every time I clear my throat, it does my head in. But here,
but thank you,
so
listeners.
what do we think? And I would also like to say that we are very unaccountable. That's another thing about the podcast, looking back, because all those false promises we made about guests.
Yeah.
Remember that? We're like,
a
we're
long
gonna have
time
a guest, we never got one. And we also I just think I just love the fact that, sometimes you say things and then you've had to go on the Facebook page and go, actually that wasn't right.
Yeah.
I just think what we're doing is fun.
Yeah.
It's good fun.
Aye.